hear you and see you. So thank you so much. Thank you. We will be starting shortly. It is 7 o'clock, but let us give 1 or 2 more minutes before we start the meeting. I am missing the background music. We always tend to have music at this kind of interfaces, but right now we don't have any music. So I don't know if anyone wants to take up a song.
I suggest Rolling Stones, Start Me Up.
Yeah.
It's always a good opener.
Next time, Charles.
Okay. Not for everyone.
No, maybe not.
Gabriella, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Hi.
Yes, Kate.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. Good morning. Geeta
morning.
actually is not going to be able to make it today. She just messaged, so we'll just.
Okay, that's all good. We're very happy and glad that you are here, Kate.
Good. Happy to be here. And then I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Is it Uche?
Ushue.
Hi. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Will you'll be advancing the slides? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I believe that maybe we should get started, even though that I see we have at this point about 60 participants joining, and we had over 400 or 450 people registering for this event. So I wanted to give it a little bit more time to see and to allow people to join us before we get started. I'll give it 1 more minute and then we get started.
No, I just pulled out that units ago that I pulled out. He knows how to do it.
Someone is speaking. I think it's you, Ted. You're not muted. Well, I think because of the time and we have a very interesting agenda in front of us, so I think it is better that we get started and people that are joining can join in as we move forward. So first of all, let me thank everyone for joining us here today. I know for some it's night and for others morning, very early mornings, and I just appreciate, and the GEF Secretariat and everyone here is appreciating your participation in today's conversation and consultation. And clearly we had over 450 people registering, so we are confident that the topic for today is something of interest to everyone. Today we are going to focus on discussion and reflections on experiences and on GEF's approach to engage civil society in both approaches as well as new and emerging initiatives that we have ongoing. Before I get started, let me remind everyone that we have interpretation for this consultation. And please, we have interpretation in English, French, and Spanish. So please go down to the bottom of your screen and pick the language that you prefer to listen to. And let me take this opportunity also to thank the interpreters for being here with us today, and to remind myself and all of you let's please speak slowly and clearly to allow them time to translate for everyone. With that said, maybe I should just quickly introduce myself. I'm Gabriella Richardson-Tem with the GEF Secretariat, and I have the great pleasure to be here with you and guide you through this next 2 hours, and very much looking forward to this. As many of you may know, the GEF partnership has a long tradition organizing these consultations with civil society prior to the GEF Council meetings. We have done this, I think this is the 10th after we started this in 2018. So we have a long tradition. We have covered many different topics during this time. But this is very great, and I want to take also the opportunity to thank all of our partners, the speakers that we have here, the GEF CSO network, and other partners that are joining us here to present and share their experiences and work. So thank you for that. Let me go just, and Ushu, if you could go to the next slide, I can go over a little bit of what we're going to do here today, the agenda and the objective of the meeting. Before I go into the agenda, let me just quickly remind everyone why we're here and what we are hoping to get out of today's consultation. Well, this is a little bit of a different consultation as far as it is not focusing on a specific topic, but really as a time and an opportunity to take stock of GEF's approaches and initiatives on supporting civil society. And we really hope that this could sort of be the beginning of a broader consultation moving forward towards GEF 9. And we are hoping, of course, that the discussion that we have will inform the GEF partnerships efforts to enhance civil society engagement moving forward, and to come up with ideas and concrete ideas and recommendations moving forward. So very much that's sort of the essence of today's conversation. We are very pleased. So in the agenda, we're going to try to hear different voices, and we're also looking forward to any feedback from the chat, and we will open up to Q&As for everyone that is here for a conversation as well. But we will be starting starting off with a presentation from the GEF Independent Evaluation Office on a very interesting and evaluation that they prepared last year, and that was presented at the GEF Council in February earlier this year. And this evaluation is very on the topic of today's consultation. No, please don't go down yet. Keep on there. Thank you, Shura. So we will first hear from Kate Steingraber on this evaluation. We're then going to move over and listen to and hear Adriana Moreira, the GEF's lead partnership specialist, and really outlining the GEF's initiatives and approaches on community-based approaches to civil society engagement and support. Then we will have a facilitated conversation and panel discussion moderated by the CSO network on sort of reflections on GEF's approaches to civil society engagement. And we are also very happy then to follow that with reflections by Aliona Rusnak, a GEF Council member and from the Ministry of Environment in Moldova. And we'll have some concluding remarks from our own GEF director, Claude Gascon. So that's sort of the overview of today's agenda. And again, super happy to be here with all of you. And let me then without taking too much time, move over and introduce Kate Steingraber, who will do a presentation on their recent evaluation on community-based approaches in the GEF. This evaluation with the GEF Secretariat really thought was really timely in the beginning of the GEF 8, really looking into the importance of community-based approaches to deliver environmental results, but also in this nexus of environment and development. And so let me just hand over to Kate, and we will have a little Q&A session afterwards, after presentation. And please, if you have questions as you listen to her, please leave those in the chat, and we will try to capture those later. So with that, over to you, Kate. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Gabriella. Thank you to GEFSEC. I'm really excited to be here today as you reflect and you look forward. And I think the fact that you've invited me here today really shows your sort of openness to the topic and to receive the evidence and feedback. And I'm just grateful to be here and able to share with you guys. So thanks for inviting. Let's go to the next slide, please. The next one also. Thank you. All right, so just to set the stage a little bit, this evaluation, as Gabriella mentioned, was presented to the last GEF Council in February 2024, so it's very recent. We assess the extent to which community-based approaches are prevalent in the GEF projects and programs, and whether the approach was linked to improved performance, which aspects of these projects were sustained, the extent to which the projects were inclusive of historically marginalized groups, whether the projects were aligned with good practice, and then how involved the local level stakeholders were in the design and implementation and project phases. The evaluation also identified factors linked with success of the approach in the GEF. Next slide, please. Let's start with a few definitions, just so we're all on the same page in terms of what we mean. We applied a broad definition of the term community adapted from the GEF stakeholder engagement policy. For this evaluation, community means a group of people who have an interest in the outcome of a GEF financed activity or are likely to be affected by it. Especially resource users and other stakeholders such as local communities, Indigenous peoples, civil society organizations, and community groups comprising women and men, girls and boys, and private sector entities. In this context and in the evaluation, we acknowledge that communities are likely not homogeneous, and it's not always easy to use a geographical reference to define them. Moving on, I will share what we mean when we say community-based approaches. So what are these approaches, and also how are they different from the GEF stakeholder engagement policy? As you all know, hopefully, or are learning now, the GEF has a stakeholder engagement policy, and this policy sets out the minimum requirements for stakeholder identification, consultation, and engagement across all GEF projects. That's across the GEF, these minimum requirements are just that, the bare minimum that all projects must do. In contrast, the evaluation that we're talking about today reflects projects that apply a community-based approach, which is a specific design modality, a design choice that emphasizes local stakeholders in the design and implementation of projects. With more specificity, I will share that our evaluation applied a definition, and we said it was a modality of project design that transfers decision-making and power, often financial and technical resources, directly to communities or natural resource users. Common features include the creation of local committees to manage processes or project activities, external facilitation to support decision-making, and also community contributions in kind or through labor. These projects typically build on community knowledge, capacity, and interest in preserving their own environment. From the literature, we know that development finance institutions use community-based approaches to involve communities and people, typically vulnerable or marginalized populations, in projects that have both social and environmental objectives. These approaches play an important role in enhancing governance and the inclusion and empowerment of communities, which in turn can contribute to sustainability or durability and ownership of investments. Next slide, please. So now that we've covered definitions, I'm going to share with you a little bit about the portfolio of projects that we identified so you can understand what we're talking about here. We assessed a portfolio of 190 projects that applied a community-based approach from GEF 4 through GEF 7. this amounted to $1.02 billion in GEF funding, or 4.9% of the total funding for that time period, with co-financing of $7 billion. Of these projects, 81% were funded by the GEF Trust Fund. The largest share of the evaluation portfolio comprised of multifocal area projects, followed by biodiversity projects. And the largest share of support regionally was found in Africa and Asia. Almost all of the projects that we looked at in the portfolio were full-size projects. And here it's very important to point out that although it's well known and well recognized that the small grants program is a very prominent example of community-based approaches within the GEF, it was not the focus of this evaluation. We really wanted to know where was this approach being applied in projects with larger amounts of financing. So we focused only on medium and full-size projects. And I do want to note that we do have every replenishment period, we do an evaluation of the GEF Small Grants Program. So that's sort of a standalone activity. We do evaluate it, we just didn't include it in this evaluation. Next slide, please. We found, moving to findings and conclusions, we found that community-based approaches are relevant for the GEF, as reflected in their presence in the multilateral environmental agreements, in GEF strategy and policies, and in national priorities. For example, in the multilateral environmental agreements, there's language that reflects key dimensions of the approach, including active participation in project design, especially in the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And then consistent with convention guidance, we found that GEF focal area strategies, especially those for biodiversity, land degradation, and climate change adaptation, contain references to key concepts that are inherent in community-based approaches, and sometimes directly referencing the application of the approach itself. Next slide, please. So turning to results and performance, we looked at how many of these projects achieved their objectives. And we found that the projects that applied a community-based approach were associated with higher performance ratings relative to the overall GEF portfolio. On the screen, you see two graphs. On the left-hand side, it's projects, the closed projects from GEF 4 and 5. And you can see that 85% of these projects had outcomes in the positive range. On the right-hand side, you see the share of projects just GEF 5. So the newer closed projects have an even higher share of projects that were rated in the positive range, showing an improvement over time. We also found that most of these projects reported achievement of socioeconomic co-benefits or benefits besides the environmental benefits at project close. Community-based approaches often integrate a design modality that includes socioeconomic co-benefits or non-environmental benefits that respond to the needs at the local level. This incentivizes or contributes to behavior change. If I can use a microphone, it'd be better. Do you want me to try to switch to phone audio? Sorry, I just got a note.
From whom?
About the echo.
We hear you very well. I don't hear, your voice is clear. There is no echo.
Regine says there's an audio, the interpreters are saying my audio has an echo.
Okay.
Should I pause and try to switch to my phone? That's my only other option.
Okay.
No, you can continue.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
All right, sorry. I just wanted to make sure people can hear. Hello. Where was I? Oh, okay. So socioeconomic co-benefits. So we found in the evaluation portfolio, 75% of closed projects applying a community-based approach also reported these co-benefits. For example, increased resilience, improved governance, poverty reduction, and improved livelihoods. Next slide, please. Moving on, we also looked at whether the results from these projects were sustained after project activity concluded. And I do want to note that one of the really exciting things about being in the IEO, or the evaluation field, is that we get to go back after all the project activities have stopped years later and see what remains of the projects. And it's really interesting, and we learn a lot. So I'm going to share with you what we've learned from that exercise. So for this evaluation, we conducted 5 case studies and visited sites and projects that had closed between 3 and 7 years ago. Sustainability of project outcomes was frequently associated with behavior change and, to some extent, alternative livelihoods activities. We also found that project activities associated with capacity building for ecological monitoring, so communities doing their own monitoring of their local areas, were also sustained past project close in almost all sites visited. For example, in Madagascar, community groups supported by GEF projects continued to conduct forest patrols and supported species monitoring in protected areas on a voluntary basis. So in some cases, they'd been paid for these activities during the project, and then after the project closed, they just adopted this as part of their community responsibility. And they were reporting instances of illegal logging, mining, burning, or poaching to authorities. They really took ownership and were empowered by the projects. Livelihoods activities were more likely to continue past project close if the activity was relevant for the local context, linked to local markets, and received continued support from the private sector, civil society, or another project. From our Indonesia country case study, we found the example of a project called the Citarum Project, where we visited a community-led, community design, community proposed, community-led waste management facility that was built with project money that was directly granted to a community group. The waste facility provided both environmental and socioeconomic benefits that have continued since the project was completed in 2016. The waste management facility was scaled up through contributions for the facility from a local energy company as part of its corporate social responsibility, and then it was scaled up again through support for the national government. Next slide. Another example of sustainability was found in the Madagascar Network of Managed Resource Protected Areas project. This project demonstrates some of the examples of good practice, which we'll discuss in the next slides. How did it do so? Well, the project strengthened community groups and gave them a role in decision-making around project activities. It fostered legitimacy in the eyes of users through involving community groups to do planning processes such as participatory mapping, creation of boundaries, zoning and rules for land use, and then it recognized community land tenure. Furthermore, the project was designed in such a way to ensure buy-in from both local communities and local authorities through tying the revenues from improved livelihoods to the sustainable resource use from the newly created protected areas. What you see on the screen is a geospatial analysis that we carried out after we visited the project communities. So they told us in Ambavarano village, they reported that because of the project activities, there was an increase in the mangrove forest. So we validated this through geospatial data after we returned from Madagascar. So on the left, you can see before the project started. In the middle, you can see around the time the project completed. And then on the right, you can see the reforestation that occurred after the project closed. So as we know, sometimes these projects take a while to actually see the environmental results, but this was a nice way for us to validate with data the environmental change that we heard from the communities. Also not shown on the screen because I had to zoom in. The areas south and west of the community reported experienced forest loss, where in this area that was protected by the project, they actually had forest cover increase, which we were able to validate with the geospatial data as well. The livelihoods activities that the communities selected for themselves were supported by the project, and they were linked, really importantly, they were linked with a non-governmental organization whose role it was to connect local producers with national and international markets, including processing and certification. This collaboration was still ongoing as of November 2022 and has contributed dramatically to the sustainability of the livelihoods activities because some of the resources that they take responsibly from the restored mangrove forest are those that they're able to sort of generate a sustainable livelihood from. Next slide, please. The next area that I'm going to talk about is inclusion. We found that women, youth, and Indigenous peoples and local communities were included more frequently in recently designed projects relative to older projects. So another example of a positive trend over time. Some issues with exclusion were highlighted in the case studies, and there were some instances of elite capture reported. However, there were also examples of project actions that projects have taken to counter this elite capture. For example, projects incorporated indicators and targets to measure the participation of landless farmers or quotas for share of groups led by women or youth, and also practices to improve the equitable distribution of benefits, such as ensuring that project assets were distributed to women or youth before others. So these were sort of good practice examples that we were excited to see. Next slide, please. This slide shows two different things. It shows, well, I'm going to talk about the funding for activities within projects. And then next, I'll talk about alignment with good practice. So first, we found that funding for specific activities or components within the projects that were directly linked to the community-based approaches has increased over time. Older projects from earlier GEF phases had an average share of 57% of the project financing within the project directly allocated towards activities to support the approach, while in the newer projects, that share increased to 76%. So an increase in the share of financing within projects directly related to these activities. Moving on to alignment with good practice. So what you see on the screen is an aggregate of how we categorize projects. And I'm going to break it down because I think it's really interesting and really important. So to characterize variation in the extent to which these projects apply the approaches, we categorize the projects based on their application of 6 good practice dimensions. And I'm going to talk about those in the next slide, but this is sort of how they aggregated. So in the first category, we created a category that we described as projects that had limited community-based approach, limited application of the approach. And this is the area shaded in white on the charts. The limited category was defined by regular participation of community groups in design, implementation, and/or evaluation. The next higher category is projects that applied what we called some community-based approaches. And this is the area shaded in the brighter blue. Projects that applied some community-based approach were defined as those that entail clear community influence over decision-making. And finally, the most comprehensive or robust projects are those that we called comprehensive community-based approaches. And that's what you see in very dark blue. And these are projects that were characterized by community control over project decisions and resources. So what does the graph show us? On the left, you have the older cohort, the completed projects. And on the right, you have the more recently designed projects. And what we see here is improvement. We see that the share of projects in sort of the middle range has increased dramatically. That's the brighter blue. And we also see that the share of projects that apply a robust approach has also increased. Next slide, please. Okay, so here we're going to break down the previous slide into the specific dimensions to give you more of a flavor of what we were actually looking for in the approach. This this framework actually came from the literature, and we adapted a public participation framework to categorize these projects. So the 6 dimensions that we examined for each project included project provisions for decision-making and accountability, whether the project incorporated local institutions and customs, whether the project explicitly recognized human rights and equality, whether the project included provisions for accountability of implementers to users, whether the project design involved development of financial or technical resources to the local level, and whether the project was considered legitimate in the eyes of users. So these were our 6 good practice dimensions. And on the graph, you see the share of projects that scored high on each dimension for both the older cohort of projects and the more newly designed projects. The older cohorts in dark blue, and the newer cohorts either in the lighter blue or the white on the right-hand side. If it's in lighter blue, it means there was an improvement. If you see white, it means that there was a decline in the trend in the share of projects. So as the graph shows, there has been improvement over time along 5 of the 6 dimensions, with the largest improvements in devolved decision-making, accountability of implementers to users, and recognition of human rights and equality. However, we did note a decline in the share of projects that devolved financial and technical resources to communities, which is an important aspect of the approach. Next slide, please. Finally, we looked at community engagement at along the different project phases. And we found that in GEF projects, there tended to be more community involvement during the implementation and monitoring and evaluation phases relative to the design phase. On a related note, we found that the amount of time and resources allocated during the project preparation phase are sometimes insufficient to conduct the outreach, engagement, and analysis that would allow the projects to reflect the needs of communities themselves. Communities identified by communities themselves. Furthermore, these projects typically involve more upfront activities with communities, such as socialization, group formation or reinforcement, capacity building, and participatory planning processes before other activities can be carried out. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to sort of wrap up and say that we did provide a series of recommendations that were endorsed by Council and accepted by the GEF. And we look forward to working with them in terms of next steps to make sure that those move forward. We've already had some preliminary discussions. And just to sort of wrap up, I think that this evaluation is timely and relevant for your session today, because we know community-based approaches provide an opportunity to work at the nexus of people and environment, and to co-develop projects with communities, which supports the whole of society approach that the GEF is embracing. So I hope this presentation will be helpful for you as you both reflect and also as you move forward. I look forward to hearing your reactions and also to observing the rest of the day. And then next slide, I see that Gabriella put the link to the evaluation in the chat. Thank you very much. We are going to have a published version and also a 4-pager that will be released soon. So if the technical document from Council is too dense, please check back, because we'll have more easily digestible formats that will be published soon. And we'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Kate, for this really great presentation. And I think it really sets the tone, sort of the background for the conversation that we're going to have for the rest of this session today. So thank you so much. And just as Kate was saying, I did put the link to the evaluation in the chat box. I also put the GEF Secretariat's management response. And I did see that someone is saying that it was an awesome presentation, and I agree. I think this was really great and clear. It really did outline, both the importance of community-based approaches for success of projects, but also that even though that it is not mandatory with the sort of the strict strict community-based approach in the GEF projects, but even so that there has been an increased recognition of utilizing these approaches in GEF projects. And also, as you said, even though that this presentation was not focusing on the small grants program and other initiatives, that it actually shows that we do it, these kind of initiatives, that the small grants program, the inclusive conservation initiatives and others are really embracing community-based approaches in sort of the foundation of the programs. So I don't think I need any summary of this, but I think it would be great to open it up for a little, let's say 5 minutes. We probably don't have more than 5 minutes. Open up for some questions. And please, since we can probably not take too many, just um, write down your questions also in the chat, and Kate might be able to answer them directly there as we go forward. And we will also have a Q&A session a little bit later. But let me just quickly open up, and I don't know if I do it in order, but I see Ram and then Samuel has a question. Or Ram, please can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Really very excellent presentation. And as you made the clear that SGP project has not been included in this. And the area where I come from, basically, we from Center for Public Health and Environmental Development implemented 3 consecutive phases of SGP, and that has a very good implication, right from awareness raising, model development in the area of environmental sound, healthcare, waste management. And I think you might have heard that the policy we able to influence under the SGP supported project about the mercury-free dentistry and mercury-free healthcare service. And last year, the policy we influence under this support from SGP, GEF, where government of Nepal was awarded with the Future Policy Award for the policy on mercury-free dentistry. So we receive a lot of national recognition, regional recognition to myself, to our organization, and at the same time, we are very happy to share we are able to bring the recognition to nation itself. Having said that, my query is with respect to the evaluation indicators. Have you analyzed, not in this, but maybe overall evaluation comparison, medium and small scale projects? Is there any such evidence exist? And then second question is, we know that if we talk about community engagement, SGP has more sort of community implementation mode of almost all projects under SGP. But I think in the civil society, ECA meetings, physical meetings, there is a less or relative participation from the SGP grantee and all that. So I urge, maybe I think there is a need to increase participation of those groups who is directly working
We have very difficulties of hearing you right now. It's coming out
So
and
these
in.
are the 2 things I wish to flag here.
Thank you. We had a little bit of a problem hearing you in the end there, but I'm sure
okay.
that Kate could take your your questions later. But Kate, before I hand over to you to respond, let's hear from Samuel. And please, if for timing, be a little bit
Yes,
concrete with your
sure.
question. Thank you.
No worries, no worries, no worries. It won't be long. Apologies.
Yeah,
I will make.
so no, it's all good.
Yeah, yeah. So, first of all, my name is Samuel Jose. For context, I used to also work with the government of Indonesia on multilateral financing. So, GEF is not the first time I hear it, but not right now. I already resigned from the ministry. But yeah, my question will be a very interesting presentation and findings that you present there about where you mentioned that GEF projects with community-based approaches has more better positive result and findings and impact to the community. However, I just want to highlight something. During the assessment also regarding GEF projects that promote CBA, in the implementation, how about the gender framework, gender mainstreaming, and then the environmental social governance implementation of the project? So aside from project that promote ESG, what I'm talking about is, you know, the ESG, the sustainability, as due diligence, as well as the safeguard aspect of the project implementation as well. Is there any GEF project in that that you present? Is that one of one or two project maybe, you know, that has a challenge? For example, the land use issues are conflicting with indigenous people or some sort, and is there any, you know, gender mainstreaming, innovative approaches that you guys are promoting in this regard? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samuel. I think that those are the only two questions I got on there, and I see there's a couple of more in the chat, but we can do those later. But Kate, would you like to reflect a little bit on the two questions we've received so far?
Yeah, I think
Thank you.
I was having trouble hearing Ram, but I think the first question, I didn't hear his second question, but I think his first question was looking at smaller and medium scale projects. Just to reiterate, we did not look at SGP. So we do have a full standalone evaluation on SGP. It's kind of a different model. The level of documentation is different. It's sort of, the reporting is different. So it's from an evaluation perspective, it's challenging for us to compare the level of data that we can access from the SGP with, for example, what you get with a medium or a full-size project. So we do standalone evaluations of the small grants program, and we do have an update of that planned for, I think, probably a year from now. So there'll be work coming on that. If you want to put your second question in the chat, I'll be happy to answer it. I couldn't hear it because of the audio. And then your question. So we did not look at the ESF policy or the gender mainstreaming in this evaluation. We have looked at that in previous evaluations, and we do have another evaluation that I'm leading on inclusion that will be presented about a year from now that will look at, look at exactly what you were asking about. So conflicts related, for example, with Indigenous people, application of the ESF framework, women, IPLCs, and inclusion of other marginalized groups vis-a-vis the policies, and also more broadly how they're integrated into GEF programming and projects.
Thank you so much, Kate. Maybe we could put the links to the other evaluations there as well on the in the chat box if anyone wanted to see the evaluation that you've done on gender and safeguards and the others. The GEF's institutional policies. I think we are running a little bit behind schedule, so I would like to push us forward. But again, Kate has kindly offered to stay on for the rest of this meeting. So if you have any questions, please add them into the chat, and hopefully Kate can respond to those there. So with that, can I thank you, Kate, for a fabulous presentation and really setting the tone for this conversation moving forward. So again, thank you and the IO for your participation. With that, I would like to push us forward in the agenda and to introduce Adriana Moreira, who is the GEF's partnership lead specialist in the partnership division. And here we will hear an overview of GEF's approaches and initiatives to civil society engagement, And let's see if I can see that Adriana is there. Do I see you, Adriana?
Yes, I'm here, Gabriela.
There you are. Now I see you. So with that, I think I'll just hand over to you, and
Thank you.
there you go.
Thank you so much. Major pleasure to be here with you all today. It's great to have this presentation by Kate setting the tone, as you said, because we see the impact and how important it is to have the community-based approach and the involvement of civil society and local indigenous peoples and local communities in GEF projects. They actually are at the heart of all our efforts. The GEF has long acknowledged the vital role of civil society in its operations and programs, and they provide invaluable local expertise, knowledge, and advocacy in environmental issues. These groups are actually the eyes and ears of the GEF on the ground and can be extremely effective agencies, as we've seen in this project, in this review by IO, including, I was very taken by sustainability of the actions long time after the project was closed for the necessary transformative change needed to alter the trajectories of environmental degradation. The CSOs play a key role by enhancing recipient country ownership and accountability, reaching out to communities, to local stakeholders, and contributing with skills, experience, and knowledge. Recognizing this valuable role, the GEF has been committed to promoting the civil society participation in GEF programs and projects. I was very glad to see this review of the GEF portfolio. Today, in this brief presentation, as mentioned, I will focus more in the existing platforms and the dedicated financing windows. But one of the results that is shown in the evaluation presented by Kate is how important is this engagement throughout our portfolio, throughout the whole GEF partnership. At the onset of GEF 7 in 2018, the policies on stakeholder engagement, gender equality, and environmental and social safeguards were updated. These policies sought out some specific core principles and mandatory requirements for stakeholder engagement in GEF governance and operations. They reaffirm and operationalize the GEF commitment with respect to promoting transparency, accountability, integrity, inclusion, and effective participation of stakeholders throughout the cycle. I'm going to showcase very quickly the various platforms and initiatives that the GEF has to ensure the active engagement of our key stakeholders. I will first describe the platforms and then take a quick look of the dedicated financing windows and programs that we have. Next slide, please. In 1994, the GEF Council established the CSO network that was launched in 1995. So initially, the network's primary role was to collect and present the CSO's feedback on GEF policies and projects to Council. Over time, the partnership evolved into a global partnership dedicated to addressing environmental challenges within the GEF focal areas. The GEF network's CSO network mission is to strengthen civil society partnerships with the GEF, enhance participation in GEF decision-making, contribute to policy development, and promote local action on environmental issues. The network plays a vital role in providing feedback to the GEF Council, participating in consultations and workshops, and actively engaging in GEF assemblies. Next slide, please. The Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group is another platform representative of key rights holder of the GEF. It serves as an important platform to inform and advise the GEF on its policies, strategy, including on the policy on environmental and social safeguards, where IPAC members were involved in the design of the minimum standard dedicated to indigenous peoples and how to implement it within the GEF process. IPAC has also a very important role in increasing understanding of the GEF among indigenous peoples globally, while also provided an important voice and perspective at various international forums, including the biodiversity and climate change conventions. Next slide, please. Moving on to another important platform to ensure the substantive integration of gender equality and women's empowerment in GEF projects operations. The GEF Secretariat has convened the Gender Partnership, whose members are gender focal points or social inclusion leads from the 18 implementing agencies of the GEF, as well as the gender leads for the secretariats and conventions that the GEF serves. The Gender Partnership brings together a powerful pool of passionate, dedicated gender experts and champions, aiming to ensure that projects and programs substantively integrate gender equality and empower women while promoting the achievement of global environmental benefits. The priority working areas for the Gender Partnership include capacity building and awareness raising on gender mainstreaming, gender analysis, knowledge products, compilation of good practices, support to women's organizations, and overall strengthening our communications on impact and gender resources. Now I'm going to move into the dedicated windows of financing for these specific stakeholders that we currently have at the GEF. But I want to emphasize again how this has been mainstreamed into our larger portfolio of GEF programs and projects globally. Next slide, please. The flagship of the GEF dedicated financial windows and programs is our beloved Small Grants programs, the SGP. The SGP has been a unique and essential element of GEF work since its establishment in 1992. For the past 30 years, SGP has delivered over $795 million to more than 27,000 community-based projects. It has consistently provided an important avenue to work closely with civil society organizations and community-based organizations in support of the GEF's mission and mandate. It has served as an essential piece of the GEF's larger and increasing efforts to support inclusion and strong engagement of civil society stakeholders and partners, providing finance as well as technical and capacity building support to indigenous peoples, local communities, women, and youth. Today, the program is currently active in 128 countries, including 37 small island development countries and at 40 least development countries. SGP 2.0 is designed and is being prepared to further support the local actions by civil society actors in support of higher innovation, local livelihoods, and the GEF's ambition to contribute to a green and blue recovery and a healthier, more productive and resilient planet. Next slide, please. In response to a white paper from the IPAC group, the Inclusive Conservation Initiative was created in GEF 7. This is a special GEF-funded project to support indigenous-led conservation with governance by indigenous peoples. This project is providing larger grants than typically available to indigenous peoples and local communities, recognizing the gap between the role in safeguarding the environment and the resources they actually receive. ICI was created responding to calls for direct access to climate and biodiversity finance for indigenous peoples. With a total of $25 million, this initiative is supporting 9 indigenous organizations across 13 countries with grants varying from $1 to $2 million. ICI is meant to be an innovative project, but the large majority of GEF support to indigenous peoples and local communities goes also through the regular programming. And this has been a very important aspect that was also highlighted in evaluations of the importance of mainstreaming these groups into the larger portfolio of the GEF. More recently, next slide, please. At the last GEF Assembly in Vancouver, Canada, we launched the Inclusive Challenge Program to support community-led change in nature projects, in community-led climate change and nature projects. This program funds community-based groups that involve indigenous peoples, youth, women, girls, and other local stakeholders in project design, implementation, and decision-making. Grant awards here are up to $100,000, and they are provided along with access to a knowledge and partnership platform that facilitates sharing of experiences, grassroots actions. This program enables the GEF to partner with local civil society organizations and community groups, supporting innovative solutions for environmental and community benefit. A selection panel comprising different stakeholders chose 23 winners from nearly 600 applications representing countries across Latin America, the Caribbean, Africa, and Asia Pacific. So this is also a very recent initiative that we are consolidated and focusing on the level of these innovative solutions and the CSOs and local community organizations. And one of our also latest programs focus on youth. And next slide, please. And it's a very important initiative that was approved in the GEF Council December of 22. The Gustavo Fonseca Youth Conservation Leadership Program that we currently calling the Fonseca Leadership Program is an innovative initiative support young conservationists from GEF recipient countries. This program has 4 key components: Youth Conservation Fellowship, supporting regular masters and PhD studies for promising young professionals, youth grants for biodiversity fieldwork to fund innovative field research projects promoting conservation and engaging early career professionals, and also awards for youth leadership participation in selected international events, support and travel and attendance for exposure and experience, and a youth global conservation symposium bringing together the young leaders, professionals, and mentors to discuss current conservation challenges. Next slide, please. This program is coordinating activities with several partners in the field of conservation and education, applying an innovative approach to work directly with regional and global partners to quickly achieve coverage of all GEF recipient countries. We have recently processed the first contracts for this program. These are some of the institutions we are working with, and it's been calls for proposals. You can have the access in our pages for selection of candidates for this very innovative and comprehensive program. Last slide, please. In conclusion, I want to emphasize that the GEF's commitment to inclusion and diversity goes beyond stakeholder engagement and participation in governments. We are dedicated to creating meaningful opportunities for civil society, indigenous peoples, local communities, youth, and women's groups to thrive. Through our portfolio of projects, expanded programs, and these dedicated windows, we are empowering these vital voices for collective action to drive transformative change and ensure a healthier and more resilient planet. Thank you. We will take questions later. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Adriana, for this really great overview of what we have been doing, what we are doing, and what we are planning to do. So this is super great. And we are a little bit running behind time. So I think we are not going to take any questions right now, but we have a dedicated session a little bit later where we'll open up for a moderated Q&A session. And please, if you have any questions to Adriana and her presentation, you can also add it in the chat. I did already see one question from Kathleen Rogers on education. And this is actually a really good point that maybe we can address in that session later. But I think in order to keep us on track, let me introduce the next segment of the conversation. And if you can go to the next slide, Ushua. So in this section, it's finally time. We have now heard from the GEF IAO, we have heard from the GEF Secretariat, and now it is time to hear from our partners, their experiences and feedback and recommendations moving forward. And we're very pleased to have Faisal Parish, the chair of the GEF CSO network, to moderate this conversation, and very happy to have the panelists here today. I trust that Faisal will introduce the panelists as he opens this conversation. Really, this is about hearing from our partners on the ground, how their experiences with GEF's approaches to civil society engagement. So Faisal, over to you if I can see you. Are you there, Faisal?
Yeah.
You are there.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the panel session on reflections and facilitated conversation on GEF's approach to civil society engagement. My name is Faisal Parish from the Global Environment Center in Malaysia. I'm currently the chair of the GEF CSO network mentioned by Adriana just now, that works to bring together CSOs from around the world working to safeguard the global environment. As you can understand from the previous speakers, civil society and stakeholder engagement is very important to the GEF from the time of its establishment 30 years ago. However, more needs to be done to enhance the role of civil society and broaden and deepen their engagement in the development, implementation, monitoring, and reporting of the work of the GEF. Civil society is also key to mobilizing the people of the world to change their behavior to ensure the survival and sustainability of our planet. We're very lucky today to have a diverse panel representing civil society from around the world. And I'd just like to ask the panel members, open their videos and unmute their microphones. And then one by one, let me introduce very briefly the panel, and then just a couple of words from each panel member to add on just a little bit more. So our first panel member, I'm very happy to introduce, is Juliet Grace Luwede, is an environmentalist and passionate youth activist from Uganda, currently pursuing a career in environmentalism. She is also the UNCCD Youth Caucus Global Focal Point. So Juliet, just a few words of introduction, just say hello. Unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Faisal, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Juliet Grace here. I'm currently joining you from Bonn, where I've been attending the UN FCCC SBIS. So lovely to be here.
Thank you, Juliet. Our second panel member is Lionel Requena. He's a sustainable development professional with 20 years experience and is the national coordinator of the GEF SGP in Belize. Lionel, please say a few words.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. Certainly, it is an honor to share a few words from the Belize perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our third panel member is Ms. Cecile Guidot Alvarez from the Philippines. She is the visionary founder of the Philippine Educational Theatre Association She's honored as a UNESCO Artist for Peace and is the director of Earth Savers, which is spreading the message around the world to save our planet. Cecile, please say hello.
Thank you. We're very enthused to share our program of development, rehabilitation, and education through arts, media, science with sports. It means dreams, and we have to dream for a healthy, safe, and peaceful, sustainable environment.
Thank you very much, Cecilia, and welcome to the panel. And last but not least, let me introduce Tumaini Charles Marjani from Tanzania. He is the executive chairman of the National Environment Stakeholders Forum, known as Tanzania Climate Change Initiative. He is also the current vice chair of the GEF CSO network. Tumaini, please say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Faisal. I would like to introduce a little bit that I am speaking from Tanzania, East Africa. A lot of greeting from Africa. We are very grateful to be part of GEF for more than 20 years, working with GEF in Tanzania and particularly in East Africa. We will have time to speak more later, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Charles, and welcome to all the panel members. Let us move to the second step in our session today, and that is just, I'm going to give 2 to 3 minutes per panel member to go into a little bit more detail of some key issues according to their area of experience. So firstly, Juliet, tell us more about the UNCCD Youth Caucus. How can youth contribute to achieving the targets of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, such as the net zero land degradation target?
Thank you very much, Faisal. Maybe I'll start off by introducing who the UNCCD Youth Caucus is and what we do. So the UNCCD Youth Caucus is the formal and dedicated youth engagement mechanism of the United Nations to combat desertification. Our areas really of work include youth empowerment, capacity building, action, and our collective goal or our role is to ensure that as many young people out there get to engage within the UNCCD process. So the UNCCD Youth Caucus was established in 2019 during COP14 in New India, where the parties officially said, oh, we need a youth engagement process, and hence the UNCCD Youth Caucus, which is the youth constituency. I think many people might be familiar with UNGO, which is for UNFCCC, or the Global Biodiversity Network, which is for the UNCBD. So UNCCD Youth Caucus is for UNCCD. In response to the question that you've asked, I think I would say already as young people, we are playing a role in achieving UNCCD's degradation targets. And we are doing this in various ways. And I could cite a couple of examples. For example, one of our Youth Caucus members, and who has been previously a UNCCD land hero, Patricia Chibombo from Kenya, is organizing young people to participate in campaigns that are looking at land management practices, but she also leverages the use of social media to spread information while mobilizing more young people and communities to take action towards land degradation issues. So that's one example of what young people are already doing. And recently at PRIC 21, which is one of the mechanisms for UNCCD, the Youth Negotiators Academy launched the Land Youth Negotiators Program, an effort that's aiming to at inclusion of young people within the decision-making processes of UNCCD, because previously there was a gap, especially when you look at within the negotiation spaces, young people are never there. So the Land Youth Negotiator Program has been designed to ensure that we prepare young people this year ahead of COP16 that's happening in Saudi Arabia, that this time round, our parties will have young people as part of that delegation. Young people will be part of these decision-making processes. But again, like I mentioned, the UNCCD Youth Caucus, again, the role we're playing in terms of UNCCD's degradation targets, we organize webinars with partners like Landesa, UNDP or FAO to ensure that young people get to speak and meet with experts to have conversations around matters UNCCD process while building each other's capacity when it comes to land degradation and desertification. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juliet. Let's move to Lionel from the Small Grants Program you have been working with a number of years. So as the national coordinator for the GEF Small Grants Program in Belize, what have you seen CSOs rarely contribute to safeguard global environment, and what challenges have been faced for the CSOs to have a stronger role in addressing environment challenges?
Thank you so much, Faisal. And indeed, greetings from the GEF Small Grants Program based here in Belize. I'll be sharing our perspectives. Since 1993 in Belize, we have been supporting community-based organizations, NGOs, to operationalize the GEF focal areas. And so I've seen that the civil society organizations have played an important role in ensuring that community innovations and those ideas grounded at the community level are the germination process is supported by the GEF Small Grants Program, addressing the needs of the poor and marginalized vulnerable communities. And so the GEF Small Grants Program has been a consistent program dedicated to support local leadership, and of course, investing in civil society organizations to operationalize global conventions, national policies at the grassroots level. And so the GEF Small Grants Program has been an inclusive, impactful, and innovative program that is widely recognized as the People's GEF, because the GEF Small Grants Program works directly at the grassroots level, supporting community innovations at the landscape and the seascape level. It is important to note that throughout the years, the GEF Small Grants Program has been a consistent partner supporting civil society organizations, supporting agroecological farming practices, reducing land degradation, improving resilience to climate change, but also fostering civil society dialogues with government to enable sustainable and durable solutions at the community level. Noteworthy is the importance of supporting local governance approaches and models for long-term solutions. It is important to mention that the marine environment is an extremely important space for fishers, for resource users, and so supporting nature-based solutions has been critical in our aspect as a program to support national rights-based fisheries, new tools, new approaches. And Belize has the Belize Barrier Reef Reserve System World Heritage Site, which certainly is an important and global heritage, and communities, civil societies play an important role in ensuring that this unique site is protected and preserved for future generations. I have been inspired by the people I have met and the stories I've heard on the lives that have been changed by the GEF Small Grants Program. And so throughout Belize, we have over 309 projects. I feel beyond humbled. I feel inspired. When we put people first and create the enabling environment and invest in them, people are moved to action and can do great things. However, I would want to highlight that civil society also face severe challenges in terms of sustaining those community innovations. Beyond the GEF Small Grants Program, we need the civil society organizations need additional funding to upscale those community innovations, to sustain them, but also to invest in local leadership at the grassroots level. And I concur that the investments that are made by the GEF Small Grants Program need greater financing, such as blended financing approaches at the landscape and seascape level. And civil society contributes significantly towards protecting nature. And when we invest in civil society organizations, we're also creating the space for greater dialogue and greater governance approaches. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lionel. Very great perspective there. Let us move to Cecilia. Cecilia, you've been a pioneer in promoting culture and arts as a key tool to advance social and environmental issues. Can you tell us about some of the key lessons? You have also worked with differently abled communities. How have they made a difference in spreading the message? Cecilia, please.
Yeah. Actually, it's important for us to attain peace, climate justice, and sustainable development cannot be attained unless we declare war against poverty and pollution, drugs and disease, ignorance and injustice. Not by compulsion, but by persuasion, not by force of arms and missiles, but by the power of art synergized with media. We have dubbed this the techno-resilient art, earth-saving education. And what is most important, the Earth Savers was founded because precisely our founder, Senator Alvarez, said that even if he created all of the best laws to protect Mother Earth, we need to really be able to understand the issues, to reach everyone, nobody left beside. It's not just for the elite knowing about all the science. It must be popularized. It must be understood in cultural symbols that people understand so that they can be motivated to be engaged in protecting people and planet, fighting poverty, and actually providing the necessary education. It is important to make sure that we develop the gold mine of talent in every person. This is the wealth of a country, in spite of physical, economic, and mental disability or social status. And we have been providing inclusive, interdisciplinary, intercultural, intergenerational techno-arts methodology. So it is important that we change attitudes and behavior, and through performances and the training, we are able to convince people in very easy terms, including a soap opera, to make the concept of green transition, of the agony, death, and resurrection of the forest and the ocean as carbon sinks, in order to help us understand what it means to cut our carbon, water, and waste footprints. We even have a rap song on garbage recycling and composting. Soap opera is so important because you are able to make sure that it is reaching everybody, meaning to say it is not just for the elite, but we must reach the persons with disabilities, and they are the most vulnerable with the climate impact, and they must be given emergency priority response when there is time of crisis. And when they perform and you see their capability and their confidence, and they are interacting with indigenous youth, with youth with in difficult circumstances, even including seniors or orphans, you have a portrait of social cohesion, of compassion, of caring for each other. And so we call it cultural caregiving, providing the necessary arts education so that they are embedded with the values that will allow them to be engaged in good governance and responsible citizenship. We have television and broadcast programs to provide them a voice, the marginalized, so that they can express all of their angst as well as their stories of gaining strength and triumph of the spirit against challenges. So we have undertaken this program so that everybody is really involved. There is a failure of communications, even to let people know about the Sustainable Development Goals, about how this is really linked to, let's say, confronting climate change. So that it's important, and we're grateful that GEF is providing inclusivity by thinking of engaging and involving, integrating the persons with disabilities which suffer bias and prejudice and stigma, but they can be given confidence and capacities in order to have a dignified life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cecilia, and inspiring comments from someone who is only 80 years young, and yet the inspiring life you have led to inspire intragenerational action to spread the message amongst all to transform life on this planet. So thank you very much for your message there. And last but not least, let me turn to Tamani. You are the vice chair of the GEF CSO network and have also engaged with many local community and farmer groups in Africa and elsewhere. How can civil society organization and indigenous people and local communities contribute to meeting GEF's target to safeguard the global environment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Faisal, the chairman of GEF CSO network. To start with, I would like to really say that for the past 20 years in Tanzania, we have been implementing different GEF projects, particularly small grant program. But we have been having a very great forum of stakeholders in environmental related activities, and we are having a plan that every 6 months we convene a national summit where we meet in diverse groups, youth, women, indigenous people, as well as farmers networks. In Tanzania, one of the main achievements with GEF, it is the government of Tanzania giving support to different projects. I will mention our Excellency Mama Samia, the President of Tanzania, has launched this several times, the clean cooking project to assist the women in Tanzania as part of the program to back up GEF programs. That's one. And number two, under the Prime Minister's office, as well as the Vice President office, there is a program to involve youth through Educate and Read with a Tree. And it's a program that every student from primary to university has to plant at least one tree. So those are kinds of programs touching youth and women. But there is also another very touching program that has been initiated by the President of Tanzania, Her Excellency Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan, on the indigenous people, the Maasai people in Tanzania. This project is linking the livestock farming as well as the sustainable tourism under the Royal Tour program that was initiated by the President. So there has been a number of success stories as far as SDP and other GEF projects are concerned. But on the different multi-stakeholders forum we are doing in Tanzania, one great challenge I have to share with you that still need some intervention from the global community as well as from the GEF and partners. This is like in Tanzania, we are number 2 in terms of the number of cattle population in Africa, accounting for more than 33 million cattle population, and mainly most of them are the local East African Zeb cows. The major challenge is that most of our smallholder farmers, they move from one place to another in search of pasture and water. And one of the pressing questions during stakeholder forum was, how can GEF start a special window or a special process to deal with farmers' cooperative societies, because farmers by African laws or Tanzanian laws are in groups of societies, primary cooperative societies, or famously known as SACCOs, and these are local CBOs for farmers. And these farmers, if we don't have a special program to make sure that they can own their land, they can settle down, there can be a program special to grow cattle feed and store cattle feeds. It means they will be still moving from one region to another in search of pasture and water. And in turn, they will be cutting trees to get firewood for cooking. And they will also need to go and disturb the water sources because the animals, they need water. But they also need to settle down because they need places where they can find enough cattle feed for their animals, but also enough water for the animals and the community too. So it's high time, because most of the forums, it has been repeatedly requested by farmers that because GEF has started working with the CSO, including youth, women, and indigenous people, what is the plan for GEF and other global partners to see this smallholder farmer who is feeding Africa, who is feeding most of the population, because more than 80% of the agriculture production in Tanzania and also in Africa and other developing nations are being produced by the smallholder farmers. So what are the real strategies? We have started to try make some refresher calls for the leaders of the farmers network to help them how they can apply and engage in different GEF projects and other global projects. But still, because of the illiteracy level of the smallholder farmers, it is high time we recommend that we have a special window for the farmers network. And perhaps in the GEF network, we can have a special regional focal point representing the farmer network. For those few remarks regarding the performance of GEF project and other stakeholders program in Tanzania, and in particular East Africa region, I would like to pause there and then wait for other question if there is anyone to ask any question. Thank you very much, Mr. Faisal.
Thank you very much, Tumaini. So we're running a little behind the time, and we also started late. So I basically got the two more questions, but we're going to combine them. So I'm just going to do one sort of final round across the panel and ask you, what can GEF do better to enhance involvement of civil society and marginal group, and what final message or recommendation you want to give. So we'll go in reverse order. We'll start with Tumaini and end up with Juliet. So just, one key recommendation, although you've already mentioned something in your remarks just now, but key thing GEF can do to better enhance engagement of civil society and marginalized groups, and what overall message or recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Faisal. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Faisal. One key recommendation to GEF is that without addressing the food security for the smallholder farmers across developing countries, it will be very hard to have sustainable projects for protecting our planet. So all the environment programs has to align with food production for our smallholder farmers who are tirelessly at the farm producing for the entire community. And two, I will recommend that as we give weight for the women, we give weight for the indigenous people and the youth, it's high time now, GEF, to consider have a special program and project specifically for the smallholder farmers across developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tumaini. Let me come to Cecilia. Cecilia, what is your recommendation or key message that you would like to give to GEF and this group?
Well, sustainable development cannot be attained unless culture is dynamically applied It can even be retarded if it is culture is marginalized. We had an SDGs Resiliart Earth Saving Peace Global Festival in spite of the COVID restriction of almost isolation. We were not held hostage by a virus. And so it's important, communications must be given to all. It must embrace everybody. It must reach the farmer, the driver, every sector of society must be informed so that they can be involved. They cannot be engaged in a collective action. And therefore, we are suggesting that if there is a sports Olympics, we should be able to have what we had started in the Philippines continued into an annual reaching out, using creative expressions, innovations to crystallize conditions and what can be achieved. What are the good examples? And we must reach the hearts and the minds of people in order to be involved. Otherwise, we will just be having documents galore. It must be acted upon, and now, not in order to save tomorrow. So please, if we can utilize communications effectively, culture-based, pride of habitat, heritage, history, we must recharge conscience, we must echo the cries of the orphans, the widows, who are, well, discombobulated with the war, with the climate catastrophes, refugees living in tents. We have to do something beyond words, and we must reach hearts and minds of everybody, and they must know the problem and be given the alternative solutions that they can follow. That is the key. And we need GEF to be engaged in a culture-based education for all.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. Very strong and great words and message. Let me move to Lionel. What is your key message to GEF and the recommendation?
Thank you so much. What we need is to upscale financing directly to the indigenous people-led organizations, to the grassroots women, youths, civil society organizations that are at the forefront. In fact, indigenous peoples and local communities have always been faithful stewards of nature, and we need to provide additional and upscale financing to these civil society organizations that are protecting nature. And so they are our faithful stewards and guardians of nature. They hold vast knowledge, and of course, they are key to protecting nature. And so without the indigenous peoples and local communities, we will not be able to address and achieve our targets. What we also need is an integrated approach to promote nature, biodiversity, and indigenous knowledge. As we celebrate 30 years of the GEF Small Grants Program, let us continue to use the GEF Small Grants Program to bring coherence between policy and action and uphold meaningful partnerships, blended science, and indigenous knowledge. It is important to note that we will not be able to achieve sustainable development and the sustainable development goals without civil society. And so we need greater representation, investing in local leadership, local empowerment processes, but also more civil society and government dialogues to address key issues of financing and protecting nature for the benefit of humans and nature. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lionel. And last but not least, Juliet, what is your recommendation to GEF and overall message?
Thank you very much, Faisal. I think I'll start with what Leon ended it at. I think from my perspective as a young person, there's need for, again, GEF to increase funding for sustainable land management. And speaking from the UNCCD side of things, GEF can allocate a significant financial resource to support sustainable land management processes, ensuring that the local communities where I come from have the tools and knowledge they need to restore and protect their land. because I believe and I'm confident that in investing and promoting climate resilient agricultural practices that protect the land and improve soil health, but also will be able to ensure food security in the face of climate changing conditions that we have at hand today. From the UNCCD side of things, I would say at COP15, a decision was passed by the parties when they requested for a youth engagement strategy. And for the last couple of months, we've worked as the UNCCD Youth Caucus closely with the UNCCD Secretariat to ensure that we do a lot of consultations to understand what are the specific needs of young people when it comes to engaging within the UNCCD process. And I'm happy to say that this youth engagement strategy is ready, but it needs collective and collaborative approaches between not just the GEF, but different stakeholders to ensure that this youth engagement strategy that we've come up is actually supported and implemented to the core. So that's something that I would empower and recommend that the GEF gets involved in. How can the GEF support the youth engagement strategy? But then also as a collective, as people that are part of the GEF CSO network or as the broader GEF, if we could work together to promote youth involvement by recognizing and supporting the virtual role that us as young people, we are playing when it comes to combating desertification and land degradation, plus drought, by promoting and creating platforms for meaningful youth participation, supporting youth-led initiatives, and including youth representation within decision-making processes, I feel like we'll be on the right track. So thank you very much, Faisal.
Thank you very much, Juliet, and all of the panel members for your very impressive, thoughtful, inspiring comments and suggestions. We're reaching the end of the panel session, and I meant to give a short wrap up. I think almost impossible to summarize the very large number of suggestions, but let me highlight a few issues. I think, as said by Cecilia, every sector of society can and must be involved. We must transform the heart and mind, not just try and put out technical documents. We must not only cater for we should not focus on catering for the elite, but we must engage every sector of society. I believe that this is also the vision of GEF, with for GEF 9, the next programming period, of a whole of society approach. But the views of this panel, I think, have given very concrete suggestion of what measure can specifically be done. CSOs play a critical role in enhancing the participation of indigenous people and local community and helping ensure sustainability of action and transformation of practice. The panel discussion has also illustrated the importance of putting different key critical stakeholder groups, such as youth, women, farmers, indigenous people, local communities, artists, and others, to really engage their power to reach out and transform and get the message across. I think many of us have been involved in many projects and processes, international negotiations and so on, where it is certainly not inspiring and it cannot get the message across to people. And we have some great ideas: rap song on garbage recycling, soap operas on the environment. These are engaging whole of society. So we need to, we have heard key possibilities about strengthening the engagement of youth in negotiation. They are the future and they need to be engaged at the early stage and play the role in giving their vision for the future. We heard about small grants program as the people's GEF, and that is building capacity of civil society in agroecology, resilience, CSO dialogues with the government, sustainable agriculture. There are already very key building blocks for transformation, but overall call or recommendation from the panel that we need to redouble and scale up efforts. At the moment, the resources that GEF is currently allocating directly for projects led by civil society, I believe, is less than 2%. And we need to really increase that and make an effort to get at least 10% funding direct to civil society organizations by 2030. Already GEF has espoused this, but this need to be really translated and put into place with the development of the new programs and activities. GEF has already established and supported various mechanisms and tools to support civil society engagement, the Civil Society Network, Indigenous People Advisory Committee, Gender Partnership, SGP, Inclusive Conservation Initiative, and the GEF Assembly Challenge, which were highlighted earlier. But more needs to be done to fully engage and to build on what was mentioned by the Evaluation Office of the value of community-based approaches, making projects more successful, more sustainable, and more effective in transforming and meeting environmental targets. We know that the world is facing the challenge of climate change and the destruction of much of the ecosystems in the world. We also, many have advocated for nature-based solutions that bring together biodiversity, climate change, and land degradation approaches to transform the land, and that can only be done with involvement of people's movement. There must be built broader civil society movements to transform land management so that we can have a nature-based solution in landscape and seascape to protect the environment for the future. So with that, I hope I have summarized or highlighted just a few of the ideas. I hope that our overall report and documentation of this session, and that this is a first stepping stone towards the future, towards the vision of GEF9, towards 2030, which is our SDG target. It is also NDC target. It is also land degradation target and biodiversity target. We must and can only do that successfully if we have a whole of society approach.
Faisal, I think you just
everyone
froze up a little
joins
bit.
together. So thank you very much for your attention, and thank you again to the panel members.
And thank you, Faisal, for this great moderation of this great panel. Super great. And thank you, Cecilia, Juliette, and Leonel and Tumeni for sharing really your experiences and your recommendations, and really bringing, and I do take to heart what Cecilia say, the hearts and the minds, and I really appreciate this open conversation. And there is no need for me to do an additional summary. Faisal, you did that very well. So let me instead try to see if we can take a couple of minutes before we have here reflections from the GEF Council and from our director, but to engage the others that are here today that has joined us, both in terms of questions, but also reflections or sharing of other ideas. So to help me to do that, you'll see that Charles Dixon, also with the GEF Secretariat, has put on his camera. So Charles, do you want to get started a little bit and see what you are seeing in the chats, or if people are raising their hands? We can hear from others as well. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you, Gabriela. Thank you, Faisal, for leading that session. And thank you for the 4 panelists. Really, so many great ideas just from 4 people. Imagine listening to 100 or 1,000 or 10,000. So this is great. Hopefully, it's inspired all of you as it has me. Very impassioned pleas and comments and ideas coming out of the panelists. And I'd like to open up to any questions. I was looking at the chat box, and to be honest, there's no direct question. There's some positive comments, of course. But if anyone would like to raise their hand, we'll be happy to hear questions. We can also refer back to the previous presentations, Adriana's presentation, for example. So anyone would like to raise their hand, please go ahead. Samuel, off you go.
Yes, I was trying to allow others to intervene first, but seeing there's no hand, so I raised my hand. So first of all, I just gonna be brief. I have 3 points to say. First, I realize that this is not a direct discussion, but with the upcoming Summit of the Future and also, you know, the agenda of global reform that is now currently being revolving in this on road to the summit of the future processes. And I think financing for development is also one of the important aspects in the chapter 1, sustainable development and financing for development. So it is our due diligence, and I think it is also our commitment that we must advance on road to the summit of the future to bring what the ideas we have and to fit into the process. I think if it will be good practically to have a representative from the GEF civil society organization to speak and intervene and at the upcoming stakeholder consultation of the summit of the future that will be reflecting upon the revised draft pact for the future. The discussion is still ongoing, so there's still opportunity, I believe. And second of all, I think, because we need to advance our insights regarding a better financing for sustainable development. And second of all, I think in regards of youth engagement, as a youth activist myself, I see presence of the youth UNCCD Youth Caucus in here. I'm also part of the Global Steering Committee member at the UNEP CYMG, the Children and Youth Major Group to UNEP, and I think GEF is also one of the institutions that work also with UNEP, the mechanism on financing. So is this we need to engage youth as well in promoting environmentally sound and enabling more youths to participate as well, and as well as in developing capacity of youth and ensuring that in every environmental efforts that we take to fight against environmental, both the term I know that seascape and landscape degradation. I think the role of youth in international multilateral processes are also important. So therefore, it is great if CSO can focus as well on supporting meaningful engagement of youth towards GEF, GEF norm setting processes. And lastly, I think just a general point, I agree we need more dynamic conversation integrating cultural aspect brought by one of the senior speakers here. I agree with her. Yeah, and one more thing, I think regarding environmental justice, I think GEF should also promote sustainability and also continuity later on every financing projects, and also on how the impact towards youth and future generations can also be measured within GEF project outcome. So to see whether we have any value adding contribution to the civil society development itself. So I think that's all. I apologize if it is not directly maybe attached to the current negotiation or let's say to the agenda item on the next GEF council meeting next week. But I do hope that this can be considered as well by the civil society representative in here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Samuel. Not to worry, everything is relevant here and everything is on the table. So thank you. Any other questions or comments? Maybe we have time for one more before we move on to Aliona. We had earlier comments on climate education from Catherine, and I just see that Dewey has also made a comment there in the chat. We can all see those. But if there's any other live questions, ready to take one more. If not, we'll move on with the agenda.
Bryce Kuhn with Earth Day. Kathleen put her question in there, but I think she had to hop off, unfortunately. We're just curious what the GEF sees as the role of supporting climate education for the development of green skills, and also some of the building community engagement and inclusivity we saw earlier.
Excellent, thank you, Bryce. So Gabriela, I think with that we can move forward with the agenda, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, everyone. And on the question on education, I think we can follow up. I saw that Adriana already responded in the chat. So with that, and thank you all for all of the input also in the chat during the whole session. And now I'm very honored to invite Aliona Rusnak from the Ministry of Environment in Moldova, and she is also the GEF Council member, to reflect what she has heard and learned during this consultation and your perspective on the importance of engaging and supporting civil society in the GEF partnership.
Well,
Thank
good
you.
evening, Alona Rusnaev, State Secretary, Minister of Environment, and I represent the constituency of the Poland, Moldova, Romania, Ukraine, Albania, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Georgia, North Macedonia. So it's a big, I'm quite a baby here in the council member since January. But through all these 2 hours, I've passed, you know, through all the life of GEF, and it's been a long time since I heard first time about GEF. It was in 2019 when I joined IFAD implementation unit, and I was delighted about GEF projects and everything. Thank you so much for wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for sharing the experience. Thanks for playing a vital role for indirecting GEF funding to generating global environment benefits. I'm coming from a civil society. Now as state secretary, I understand very well how important is civil society in bringing new ideas, in keeping an eye on civil servants, on donors, on projects, on everything. We stay really shape and fit in order to face, you know, the civil society monitoring. Thanks for participating in environmental conventional level, particularly those that are supported by GEF, for monitoring closely GEF project implementation on the ground. As we heard, many ideas that you just said will be discussed at 67th GEF Council. Of course, we'll analyze the gap analysis. We'll do the GEF policies, key social inclusion issues. And I've been writing for 2 hours all the ideas, and believe me, we will bring it on table with Faisal Parish and the GEF Secretariat, and we'll do best, you know, to get and to promote the new ideas. Just finally, I know that we're running out of time. I want to emphasize that, you know, we will do the transparent rules. We will do the involving young and our diversity. So I call it diversity in diversity. We'll diversify the investments, and this is really important. We'll bring aboard not only, you know, the big players, because I was looking in Moldova, what are the big players, you know, key, it's World Bank and everyone, you know, and IFAD and FAWA. We'll bring the babies, you know, and I think we have to create a niche for the newcomers in the civil society, and that will create a healthy competition. We'll modernize and create, and creative will become creative, because the civil society did the role, you know, to be creative, to be modern, to, you know, to really bring new ideas. And this is what I heard. So I wrote it down here. I have tremendous great experience. The first experience was in February, and during the 5 days, you know, I was just impressed how many rules there are. We do not have time for learning. We just have to, and we have time to act. So last word, think globally, act locally. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Aliona, for that enthusiastic reflection and looking forward. I think that couldn't be better. So thank you so much for that. All on time. I'm happy now to invite Claude Gascon, our Director of Operations and Strategy at the GEF Secretariat, to do a little bit of a closing. And with that, if you don't hear more from me, I just also want to take this opportunity to thank everyone, the interpreters, the speakers, and the participants for this great session. But over to you, Claude.
Thank you very much, Gabriela, and thanks to your team. And thanks, Aliona, for those very, very nice remarks. We're looking forward to next week's council meetings. We have 3 council meetings next week, and it'll be very productive. We're looking forward to seeing you as well. Firstly, I'd like to thank all of our participants, the panelists and colleagues, for some very extremely insightful presentations, comments, and remarks on how local communities, right holders, women, youth, Indigenous peoples, and persons with disabilities and other vulnerable groups can make really a meaningful and impactful contribution to tackling our current and future global environmental challenges. Secondly, I'd like to thank all of our listeners and viewers today. The fact that several hundred people registered and participated in this event again shows us the great importance and interest being placed on enhancing civil society engagement within the GEF partnership. And Faisal, you're correct. Our CEO has embraced this issue, as well has put the banner on the hill of the 10% engagement. We have our work cut out for us in the GEF 9 negotiations, but we will be marching towards that goal. Let there be no doubt that civil society actors, especially those who many of you represent today, women, youth, indigenous peoples, are at the heart of the battle of our planet's future. And without a strong civil society, we will not succeed in halting degradation and achieving sustainable development. We at the GEF are convinced that local actions conceived and executed by civil society provided the needed bottom-up approaches to restore the environment. As many of you involved in GEF projects or programs are aware, the GEF partnership is constantly looking to strengthen and expand its engagement with civil society, in particular with IPLCs, with women, youth, and groups representing other gender identities and people with disabilities, among others. For this reason, this whole of society approach that we've heard today, and we've heard from our CEO since he joined the GEF, was widely reflected in the GEF 8 replenishment negotiations, which confirmed the absolute central role made by civil society to all areas of sustainable development. I can tell you that this whole of society approach will also be one of the cross-cutting strategies that our CEO will want to push even further in GEF 9. This vision and ambition we see reflected in the increased financing of core resources and the renewed ambition of the SGP 2.0, for example, as well as the launch of the Fonseca Leadership Program focused on creating opportunities and the development for young conservationists. But of course, we're not resting on our laurels. Faced by the planetary crisis and climate breakdown, so much more needs to be done, and the talents and commitment of so many more actors, just like you, from all sectors of society, need to be harnessed and channeled into real action and results. The work will continue into GEF 9 and beyond, so please expect more events and conversations like today, which will translate into action and hold great value for us, and from which we can learn so much. Finally, let me thank Gabriela for her leadership in this event and in engaging CSOs, and the entire team for having led and organized this very productive consultation. With that, I thank you very much for your time and close this session.
And thank you so much, Claude, and for joining us here today. I just wanted, before everyone leaves, just to let you know that this session has been recorded, and we can share the recordings with everyone following the meeting. So again, for me, thank you very much to everyone, and I wish you a good day and all a great council meeting next week. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Bye-bye.
Gabriela.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank
Secretariat.
you.
Thank you, everyone. See you next week.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Cecilia.
Thank you,
very much.
Cecilia.
Bye-bye.
Excellent.
Thank you.